I mean, this is the issue, is that anti-Zionism is that anti-Semitism. The state of Israel for 50 years has said, yes, it is. American Jewish institutions have said, yes, it is. I would say it's a bit more complicated than that in the year 2023. People began to express that they were in more danger than I think they were in any empirical sense, particularly if you were a white Ashkenazi Jew of extreme privilege, navigating basic elite spaces that effectively support Israel till the cows come home. When the 1973 Arab-Israeli War posed some sort of genuine existential threat to Israel. That hasn't been the case for literal decades. So at some point, you have to understand what is the actual empirical reality on the ground. It's a major force supported by the world empire with basically unlimited money and weapons, occupying a very weak population when you come to the West Bank. You have the settlement community and the occupation, the building of, for example, highways that Palestinians aren't able to drive on. And in Gaza, you have an over decade-long blockade in an area where the population is 50% of the population is under 17. So the question as educators is, how do you legitimize someone's felt, particularly a young Palestinian who's going to Brown, I imagine was socialized in a particular Jewish community, an American Jewish community that has consciously for 50 years equated Jewishness with support of Israel, which is not necessarily something that I would agree with, philosophically, but that was done for a variety of historical reasons related to the post-Holocaust period, but whatever.
If it's not a pogrom, and I agree, that's a stretch of how to use it since 1973, and it's not a noble rebellion, I can't quite go for that either when you're talking about 1,200 people. Is there a word for it? Is part of the problem?
It's a horrible. It was a horrible act of political violence that resulted in the murder of a number of civilians and hostage taking. That is illegal under international law. It is immoral according to liberalism and all of our various thoughts. But it is explicable, is what I would say. What are the conditions that led to this horrible event? And if you're not focusing on that question, then you're not focusing on what's interesting about it, or what you would want to know to prevent it.
Wait a minute, Danny, and I want Tyler to get in. I see he wants to get in. I just want to say it's terrorism, man. I mean, this is, again, I'm just going to continue to channel this thing. You expect us to live with this on our border? You expect us to accept this as the necessary consequence of fulfilling the ambitions of Theodore Herzl and company? No nation would accept it. Why are you asking us to accept it?
So let me respond very quickly.
And what's wrong with using the word terrorism, by the way? I mean, this is simply, you want to stay in touch with reality? Let's stay in touch with reality.
Sure. I mean, I would point that person to the work of Lisa Stampnitsky, who has done an analysis of the category of terrorism. It is basically just a way to delegitimize particular forms of political violence. Now, you could either say that's fine because on decide what you want to do in that instance is delegitimize that form of political violence. That's a political act. That's fine. But empirically, this is what the term does. And I leave it up to you and your God to determine whether you're going to use it. Now, the question that then is the answer that then you respond by basically annihilating a population. I mean, is that the response? Is the response basic? And then one very quick thing. It's a little bit of an absurd claim because Benjamin Netanyahu has been funding Hamas for years. This is part of a particular political strategy by the Israeli political government to basically pacify Gaza and focus on settlement in the West Bank as the Israeli government has become more far right, et cetera. So, I mean, if you're so concerned with Hamas, maybe you shouldn't fund it. But whatever.
A generation of Jewish students are going to be imprinted by the fact that they feel persecuted, and they can point to episodes of stark resistance, physical violence, near physical violence, naked slurs hollered at them by people in real time. All of that on campuses is becoming regular. And there's a whole contingent of supposedly educated people telling them to shut up. Whereas, let's face it, racism on college campuses exists, but frankly, I can confidently say essentially no Black student for 50 years has encountered anything that stark. You have to work to find the quote unquote microaggressions, et cetera. And yet, anytime a Black student claims racism, then we have to pretend that college campuses are hotbeds of bigotry. That's not fair. And Jewish students are watching this and they're disgusted. And I would have to say, that's explicable. I understand their disgust about that.
But they're getting the support of the administration. I mean, every
Who are?
administration.
Who are getting that
The
support?
Jewish students. I mean, it's SJP and SVP that is being thrown off campus.